construction and deconstruction. Similarly, we have structuralism and deconstruction, psychoanalysis and psychological studies. Okay, you have hermeneutics. You have so many other theories which you are all familiar with. If not exactly the theory, at least you are all familiar with these, ideologies, these literary theories. Now, for the convenience of our study, I have divided the literary theories into two groups. Now, we have literary theories which seek empowerment, which seek liberation, which seek identity, which seek to re-establish the cultural identity of one's own person, one's own nation, one's own people. This is, socio-political literary theories. Socio-political literary theories basically deal with the project of empowerment. How individuals can achieve equality in the society, can achieve an identity for themselves in the society, how individuals can liberate themselves from, certain conditions, living conditions that do not allow them to enjoy their freedom and other aspects. So these are socio-political and economic, literary theories. For example, we have heard of feminism. You have history of feminism of more than 100 years now. All these theories, many of these theories have begun in the West. That is because West has advanced in science, West has advanced in technology, West has advanced in political organization, what is known as democracy. Immediately after the French Revolution, the world came to learn fraternity, equality, and brotherhood. These three things have contributed a lot towards the development of modern welfare states. And in the West, nations have given a lot of freedoms and liberties to its citizens, to its people. Against this background, against the freedom the people are enjoying in these nations, highly advanced, industrially advanced, economically advanced, philosophically advanced, politically advanced, and spiritually advanced nations, they are coming out with making use of the amount of freedom and liberties given to them, making use of these things. They have been advancing theories which are sometimes very subtle and sometimes very clear even to the ordinary man. Now, for example, we have feminism. Feminism is a literary theory, and there are writers who write about the society from a feminist point or from a woman's point of view. Why this is very important? This is very important because the feminists have argued that they have been treated as second-rate citizens by so-called patriarchal society, patriarchal establishment. The patriarchal establishment has hijacked, taken away the freedom of the woman's body, taken away the social, political, philosophical freedoms of the women. That is their argument. And what do they want to do with that? Now you have, the second sex, a very important and a seminal work so far as feminism is concerned in Europe, in which she discusses 5 different novelists. And these 5 different novelists have 5 different kinds of representation of women. Now, I would like to give a very small example here. For example, D.H. Lawrence. All of you are definitely familiar with his novel, famous novel, Sons and Lovers. In Sons and Lovers, you have Miriam, okay, Miriam and Clara Daves. There are two characters, Clara Daves and Miriam. Miriam is highly possessive. Miriam is highly spiritual because she has been brought up on the farm and she is exposed to the life around the farm. She has seen life and death, the birth of the animals on her farm. Therefore, she has a different notion of man and woman relationship. When Paul and Miriam go out for an evening walk, Paul is not happy with Miriam because Miriam, the moment she sees the sun setting, she starts offering her prayer. Whereas, Paul is expecting her to, her to be romantically attached to him. Look at it. This, in the book Second Sex, the writer considers that man expects woman to be a perfect sexual partner. Okay, and when you come to Lady Chatterley's Lover, these things become much more clear. And D.H. Lawrence was a controversial novelist. He was thrown out of the London Library until he was restored to the library by F.R. Lewis. F.R. Lewis, a great critic and a modern critic. So what I am trying to say here is, drawing your attention to is, feminists have raised some fundamental questions with regard to representation of women in literature. Now, Dante, for example, looks at woman as a spiritual guide. You are definitely familiar with Dante's Divine Comedy, where Beatrice is the spiritual leader to the main character there in Dante's Divine Comedy. And here in D.H. Lawrence novel, a woman is expected to be a perfect sexual match to man. So these, they say, are misrepresentations of women. Woman must also be seen necessarily as a human being. Woman must be seen as equal to man. Woman must be seen not as a faithful woman, not only as a woman who needs to remain faithful to her sexual partner all her life, irrespective of the man's character, irrespective of his character. Therefore, they say marriage is a glory, motherhood is a glory. Marriage and motherhood make them more of slaves than offer them freedom. So you have various brands of feminism. Therefore, feminists argue with the intention of liberating women from the shackles. So they consider that they haven't had the freedom, the kind of freedom man enjoys. Man has dictated lots of things that take away the freedom of women. Therefore, they have written, we have, CU, okay, a French feminist, LNCU, a French, and our famous essay, The Law of Medusa. Who is Medusa? Medusa, look at it. There is an irony. It's a very important, the title of the essay, Law of Medusa, is it has a lot of literary significance, feminist significance, and philosophical significance. Who is Medusa? Medusa is, in Greek mythology, is the ugliest woman who has her ears in the form of snakes. And it is a male who has butchered her off, and her head is being held, and it is shown, the butchered off head is shown to the world. Why has she been butchered off? Because she has been considered as housing all the evil powers in her. And you must have seen in your own social circumstances how some women have been hunted down, burnt alive to death because they were suspected to be, interested in which practices, the black magic, practices. You must have heard about it. Some women are, considered as evil, and sometimes they have been burnt alive. So this is what is happening. So these are the women and feminists consider these practices to be patriarchal, highly biased, and not rational. And it goes against the identity of women. It goes against the truth about women. And therefore, we have feminism. And there are feminist writers. Margaret Lawrence, for example. Margaret Lawrence, in her novel, Stone Angel, you have a university professor. This university professor, my dear friends, he is very tall. Dr. Annie Karunya, this university professor is very tall. And there is a man who proposed. She is lean and lanky panky. She is not good looking also. And she is, quite advanced in age, and nobody has proposed to marry her. In such a situation, there is a person who approaches her to marry her. And she is, very short compared to her height. When he proposes to her first time, she rejects it. She rejects his proposal because in height, he does not match her. After making this rejection, she thinks over it. She thinks over it. She thinks over the issue. And then she realizes that she is wrong. She is judging the man who proposed to her by the male standards. It is the patriarchal society that has set this norm that women should not always be of the equal height to man, and she should be lesser in equal age. Marriages are very strange even now to take place. They say, the girl should be younger than the boy. Her height should be a little less than the man's height. These are some of the patriarchal matchmaking stereotypes. And this professor in Margaret Lawrence novel, The Stone Angel, she thinks over this, and she does not want to abide by the comparatively shorter to her in height, not in any other aspect, not in intellectual aspect, not in the aesthetic aspect, not in other aspects, but in terms of height, And Dr. Annie Karunya is playing with her child. Is that your child, Dr. Annie Karunya? Annie Karunya, is that your baby? Do you hear me? Mohammed Sattar, do you hear me? Rati Topil.
Yeah. Yes, sir, I am here. Sorry, sir.
Okay, it's fine. Anyway, the whole family must attend my classes and listen to me. I enjoy it. Okay, yes. So I am bringing feminism under socio-political literary theory, the job of which, the responsibility of which Dr. P. Samuel is liberation, is establishing a new identity, is liberating oneself from the shackles that the societies have imposed all over the world. You have various brands of feminism. Every nation has evolved its own feminism. You have Canadian feminism, you have French feminism, you have Arab feminism as well. You have Indian feminists and Indian feminism. And there are lots of writers, women writers, to begin with, have taken to think about the problem of women. We have such a long silence. One of the novels, okay, long silence. It's a feminist. It's a novel written from a woman's point of view, because in our marks cards, mothers' names were not mentioned. When I went to school, my mother's name was not mentioned. Only my father's name was mentioned. But if you look at the marks cards these days, mothers' names are also mentioned because she was not, seen as necessary in writing the, dynastic relations of an individual. Now, it has become compulsory, it has become a must for every government agency to recognize the mother of a child. Therefore, this is owing to the development of feminism all over the world. There are people who are working all over the world. And now, after feminism, let's come to Marxism. Marxism is also a socio-political, economic, literary theory whose agenda is to bring about economic equality. Economic equality. This is a socio-political theory, and for its understanding, it looks at history as a history of conflict between the classes. Okay, it all began in Europe. Large areas were part of the kings were seen as sent by God to rule on us. That philosophy changed, and in modern times, it is the ordinary man who has occupied the place which used to be occupied by God now. So in modern democracies, it is the ordinary man who is a God. He dictates terms to the political parties. He dictates terms to the constitutional reforms. He dictates. So ordinary man is at the center. Marxism, in this, in this perspective, looks at the society as constituted of the base structure and the superstructure. And Marxism, argues that it is the base structure which lays the foundation for any civilization to grow, any economic society to grow, any industrialized society to go. But, the profit, the benefits of their own contribution does not reach them. That is the argument of Marx. Marx, in Israel, you have the notion of kibbutz. In kibbutz, the land does not belong to anybody. The land belongs to the nation. And if you do not have anything, a property of your own, a job of your own, and Dr. Shankar DP, were you part of Mysore University? Your face is familiar to me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm your student, sir.
Oh, nice to see you after a long time, Shankar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So Marxism looks at society as constituted of the base structure and the superstructure. But for the base structure, the superstructure does not, exist. But the superstructure is controlling, the base structure. They lay a strong foundation for economic growth, industrial growth, agricultural growth, civilizational growth. They are the ones who make the potteries, which you use in Carnatic music. They are the ones who make the guitar and you play it for 1 lakh people. The benefits of these things do not actually get back to the worker. They want to see to it that, the benefits of a nation belongs to everybody, and the wealth of the nation has to be the surplus wealth of the nation. The surplus wealth of the nation should equally belong to every individual of that land. That's what Marxism seeks to argue, and it's a socio-political literary theory. And we have Mulkraj Anand, who is writing about the Indian society from a class perspective. In addition to the class system, which is practiced in Europe and in other parts of the world, we have what is known as caste system. Caste system is based on the birth of an individual. Caste system is based on the concept of purity and pollution. So the so-called leaders of caste system, framers of caste system, see that even the shadow of an untouchable is highly polluting. That is the situation. Highly polluting. Therefore, you must have heard about this famous Satyagraha in Kerala. Famous Satyagraha in Kerala, where the untouchables wanted to take out, a march in front of the temple, but the people over there did not allow this march, protest march, even to take place. Bashir, what Bashir is that? Bashir is a famous, Malayali writer, and he also participated.
Vaikom Muhammad Bashir.
Yes, madam.
Vaikom Muhammad Bashir.
Vaikom Satyagraha. The name of the place is Vaikom Satyagraha, which Gandhi also supported in the 1920s, sometime around 1917, 18, around that time this took place. Why were the so-called members of the so-called religious group were not allowed to pass anywhere near a temple? Why? You see, it is because the Indian society. Sharda Sweet Chaudhary, kahan se aaye ho aap?
I'm from Assam.
Sharda ji,
I'm from Assam. Assam.
You are from
Assam.
Assam. Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Yes, sir.
Nice to see. My afternoon class is going to be on the Northeastern literature. Nice to see you, Sharda Sweet Chaudhary, doctor. Okay, nice to see
Thank you, sir.
And yeah, good morning. And history, Marxism looks at the history of human civilization as the history of class struggle. The surplus wealth has to belong to all the members of a society. And this was what was not happening in the societies around the world. As a result, Marxism posits a view that the surplus wealth of a nation should equally belong to all the members of a particular society and particular nation. So that's also a theory which seeks liberation, economic liberation, and political liberation, and also philosophical liberation. Why not? Because food is essential for all other things. And that's how. And we have post-colonialism and post-colonial theory. Post-colonial theory. What does post-colonial theory argue? Let's go to the primary post-colonial writers. And when we read post-colonialism, post-colonial politics, post-colonial disruptions, cultural disruptions, the first people who come to our mind are the African writers. It is Chinua Achebe, the first generation African writers. And sometime before that, we have the Negritude movement. Negritude movement is also a post-colonial literary movement. It was started in the 1930s in Paris. You have Leopold Sédar Senghor, Ami Césaire, who were all students in Paris. And they started this movement. They were, French intellectuals. The English intellectuals start talking about post-colonial politics from the 1960 onwards. Whereas in the French, Francophone Africa, Negritude movement, a literary movement, started around the 1930s. Ami Césaire, Leopold Sédar Senghor, they were all students in Paris. What was it? The first thing, they came out with the philosophy. Brother, black is beautiful. Did you hear me? They did not know for a long, long time that color black was also beautiful. Color black was considered. Why is Africa known as a dark continent? Dark continent not because it was ugly. Dark continent not because it had the people, ugly looking people. It's not that. Africa means land of no light. Land of no light or sunny land. A land where, sun is very bright. And Africa is one such continent. Sun cannot, pierce through the dense forests of Africa. That's why it was called a dark continent. Dark continent because the Europeans did not go there. Is it, just to say that it was a dark continent, some others could not go there? How just, how rational, how reasonable it is, I do not know. Anyway, negritude movement, anything that is African must be appreciated, must be hugged wholeheartedly, must be promoted, must be respected. That was the slogan of the people, writers in the negritude movement. Black is beautiful, brother. And poets and writers from America went to Paris. Amiri Baraka and all others, they started a movement, Harlem movement in America around the same time. Harlem movement in America was inspired by the negritude movement that was started in Paris. Okay, and this movement spreads to India also. This movement, the Black Panthers became the Dalit Panthers around the 1960s, 70s in India. As you are all of the Dalit literature and the Dalit movement, protest movement in India, and the Dalits, Dalit Panthers, and they were taking this word Panthers from Black Panthers in America. So the protest movement that started, literary movement, a post-colonial literary movement. Why did they start this movement? What was wrong? What was wrong? Kindly, this is what, Martin Luther King Jr. has written in his speeches, one of the speeches. The African people were underrated. Their human situation was considered as grossly inferior to the other Europeans living in the world. They were not at all considered as human beings. They were recognized as orangutans and only half evolved, not fully evolved. Therefore, they said an African is only half intelligent when compared to an European, ordinary European. And they used anthropology. How did they use anthropology? Anthropologically, an evolved species is one who has got his forehead and chin on the same line. Are you getting my point? And in case your forehead is a little backward, then your skull has not completely evolved. Therefore, you are considered as anthropologically considered as half evolved. So a few people born in Africa had this kind of a bone structure, and therefore they were considered not at all as human beings. They were considered as chimpanzees, orangutans, and other things. And this is how anthropologically the African people were underrated as second-rate human beings. And thirdly, the Europeans also made use of religion as a tool to undermine the human qualities of the Africans. They said God created man in his own image. God was not a Negro. Therefore, Negro is not a man. Look at, Sharda Sri Chaudhary. You are enjoying it. See, imagine when, if an untouchable is told in his face that you are not at all a human being, what would be the suffering? What would be the pain? You are Denny. Similarly, when they came to India, they said is a nation of snake charmers and beggars. Let's not talk about the Northeast at all. Mainland Indians who had kingdoms, whose queens were most beautiful, and whose wealth was not to be compared with any other nation in the world. And such a nation was termed as a nation of snake charmers and beggars. And in the British, social clubs, it was the placards would have been put up outside the gates. Indians and dogs are not welcome. So how were we treated, my dear friends? Indians and dogs were not treated. Therefore, the post-colonial, very importantly, Chino Achibe, Gugi Watiango, Gugi Watiango, moving the center. Okay, moving the center. So in Africa, the departments of literature where English literature is taught, are not known as departments of English today, departments of literature written in English. So there is a whole lot of difference. So in India, we have not changed it. In India, we still continue to refer to our departments as English departments. What's so English about English? Why should we? When Chinu Achebe came to Mysore in 1982, I was a student at Manasa Gangotri English department, and he criticized us for still being very Anglophile. We are suffering from Anglophilia. So they said, Chinu Achebe, the greatest of our writers, and in his essay, novelist as a teacher, he says, Africa did not hear of culture and civilization from the Europeans for the first time. Africa does not mean one long night of savagery. Africa had culture, Africa had literature, Africa had religion, and above all, this is very important, and above all, Africans had dignity, and it is this dignity that was lost during the colonial period, and therefore the responsibility of a novelist is to restore that dignity to his people. Look at it, how beautiful it is. We do not see so much of post-colonial voices in our own. In Rajarao, you do not see any post-colonial voice. Where is any, excepting the fact that he uses English? That is post-colonial. Apart from that, where is any post-colonial? In R.K. Narayan's first, friends, whose friends? Raju and his friends, whose friends? In his novel, there is a bit of
Swami and his friends.
Swami and friends. There is a bit of post-colonial politics there. That is because the boy's father raised to the headmaster about preaching Christianity in the classroom. So that is the only post-colonial element. After that, we haven't come across any such post-colonial. The way the aggressive condemnation of the Western attitude towards the colonized people that we see in the voice of Chinu Achebe is not to be seen, in the Indian writers. The kind of, that kind of energy that we see in him, the kind of vision that we see in African writers, we do not see in our own writers. Okay, you are, also free to analyze this perspective, that is post-colonial. Post-colonialism, post-colonial aesthetics, post-colonial, you have Orientalist text also. So Indian women are supposed to be exotic, so many other things, and men are supposed to be not better than slaves. This is how we have a few theories which are socio-political theories, but there are theories of meaning. Theories of meaning. Now, structuralism is a theory dealing with meaning, and deconstruction is a theory dealing with meaning. Semiotics is a theory dealing with meaning, and hermeneutics is a theory dealing with meaning. And we as Indians need to be proud of the tradition of criticism in the world. Let me repeat, we, the Indians, should be proud of ourselves. That is because if criticism as a branch of knowledge has developed in this world, its origins are in India. The origins of criticism, critical thought, interpretation of a text, appreciation of a text. The origin of the tradition of criticism is in India. And in India, the tradition of criticism is as old as our commentary tradition. We have Shankara Bhashya on Purusha Sukta. You have Ramanuja's Bhashya on Purusha Sukta. You have Madhvacharya's Bhashyam on Purusha Sukta. You see, that is commentary tradition. This is part of hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is a study of meaning, and it deals with scriptures. It deals with scriptures. It originated in Germany, hermeneutics. And what is so special about hermeneutics? My dear sirs, please open any one of the Bhashyams, commentaries of our ancient teachers. Shankara is a teacher, Madhvacharya is a teacher, Ramanujacharya is a teacher. Open any one of their, bhashyams, commentaries on the text. If you wanted to be an acharya in the Indian tradition, a Sanskrit learner has had to write a commentary on 3 important scriptures that belong to this particular people. Only if the world agreed with your interpretation, then you would be called an acharya, not otherwise. Just as you are all going to be doctors in literature, in the olden days, they practiced, if you had to be referred to as an acharya, a teacher, then you had to write commentary on 3 minimum scriptures, the so-called Hindu scriptures. Only then you would be called. So, for example, that a particular shloka begins with the word that. After that, for example, just 2 phrases. I'm giving you an example. Very not from any text. I'm not quoting from any text. Here, after that, this after that may refer to the entire critical tradition, the entire critical treatise on a particular text. You all do your literature survey when you all did your literature survey when you started writing your synopsis. You started writing your PhD thesis. What is literature survey? Literature survey is to look at all that has been written about the primary area which you have chosen for your doctoral research, isn't it? Similarly, if a person had to write a commentary on a text like Purusha Sukta, he had to consult all the other commenters on that particular text. And after that, this phrase refers to all those treatises. Okay, it refers to the entire gamut of history, spanning over hundreds of years, 200s of years. So again, I am coming back to what I said in the beginning. What I said is, all of us Indians need to be proud of criticism as a way of producing knowledge. That is because criticism in India is as old as the commentary tradition in India. Bhashyam, it's called Bhashya. You have Bhashya written by various teachers of us, and that is hermeneutics and semiotics. I have done a course in semiotics. I can speak with some amount of confidence. That is because I am an insider to semiotics. Professor Arjit Singh Gill has taught us, semiotics. I was his student, and he has taught us semiotics in 2 semesters. And semiotics is about personalizing a collective experience. Personalizing. See, language is a collective product. It is not any one individual's, wealth. It is not any one individual's property. It's a collective, wealth. And therefore, in semiotics, we study how an individual has, personified, not personalized a language, which is a collective product. To look for the meaning of a particular word, you had to understand how the changes that he has brought about the meaning of a particular word by using it, exposing it, exploring it, time and again. So you have syntagmatic, syntagmatic, and syntagmatic, and 2 kinds of thing we recognize in. If you want to make a semiotic study, you need to do certain exercises to arrive at the meaning of a particular word. So that is personalizing a language, which is a collective product, and that is semiotics. Now let us come to so-called structuralism, as has been discussed by Gerald Genet in his essay, about structuralist poetics. Okay, structuralism and poetics, literary, poetics. That's it. So I'm not dealing with any other thing, and I'm dealing only with structuralism and literary criticism, an essay written by Gerald Genet, and this is enough. Gerald Jane is enough for us to understand, the nature, scope, and the other aspects of structuralism. See, language has become accidentally. That's it. And he refers to this as an intellectual, you see, mythic thought is an intellectual bricolage. What is a bricolage? Bricolage is, an assault of things made use of in creating a new picture. Things taken from various sources. Things taken from various sources, not meant for that particular job. That is a bricolage. So mythic thought is an intellectual bricolage. When man wanted to communicate, when man wanted to develop his own knowledge system, okay, he borrowed freely from anywhere and everywhere. Okay, and he produced some sounds and they became part and parcel of our language. He referred, Kaka has become, the crow. Kaka is by its sound. There are so many other birds which also make this. We do not recognize them as crows. We recognize them by some other words. And donkey, and by its, the way it brays, that's how it has become a donkey. Similarly, elephant. They were not rationally, they were accidentally, given these names, and therefore it's an intellectual bricolage taking from available sources. For example, earth is there and you make bricks out of it, and bricks can be used for a variety of things, and bricks are also used for constructing a house. You borrow it, and there is wood. Wood has not grown for making doors for you. Trees grow on their own, but you are making it use as for making the door, for making windows, and so many things. So this is an intellectual bricolage. Similarly, I am talking in terms of the physical, things. There are intellectual things, and that is an intellectual, mythical thought is an intellectual bricolage, and therefore every object in the mythical thought, every object in the mythical thought belongs to a structure of its own. It belongs to a structure of its own, and structuralism demands the reader to recognize that inherent structure, not impose another structure. Gerald Jane is writing this essay at a time when literary theories are employed or imposed on particular texts. And Gerald Jane says it would do a great injustice to the structural thought. According to him, a text is a closed world. It's complete in itself. He is prioritizing the text. The world in a text, in a literary work of art, is complete by itself. It's a closed, thing. Therefore, the job of a reader is to go deep into it and explore its inherent and internal structure than imposing, a literary theory, an ideology on a particular text. That would lead to a rupture. That would lead to a clash of meanings. Now, for example, you want to make a feminist study of Ramayana? Don't you have enough feminism in Sita herself? Doesn't she walk out of, Sri Ramachandra's wife? Is there no feminism there? Only in Doll's House do you see feminism, because she walks out, of her marriage. So the text is complete in essence, And without analyzing, without understanding the subtle internal structure of a text, if you impose another theory on it, it may not give you the meaning for which it has been created. There is a structure within. That structure has to be recognized. And he says, according to judging and appreciation, a work of art is to enlighten the readers. There are so many unfortunate readers who may not be able to understand the real import. So the job of a critic is to make it easy for an ordinary man to understand a work of art, the sense in which it has been written, not to complicate the meaning by imposing another ideology, by imposing another idea on a particular text. Such an exercise leads to complications of meanings, and therefore it would not do justice. It would not do justice to a work of art. That is what Gerald Zane argues. And in support of it, he says a work is complete in itself. A writer is borrowing from the universe which has no bounds at all. Whereas a text is complete in itself, and a critic, is operating with a limited world. Okay. A writer's product is a limited world in the sense that a play written by a writer is limited. When the writer was producing it, he borrowed from the whole universe, and he has created a structure. When a critic attacks it, he is attacking a closed world. Therefore, Jenne says, to do justice to structuralism, a text must be very closely read. Very closely read. And a text has internal connections. These internal connections have to be established to evolve a finer meaning of it. And therefore, there is an structuralism, and there is an implicit and unconsciousness. There is an implicit structure within a text, and the job of a critic is to explore this text. And for that, critic has to do a close reading of the text, which is also one of the principles of modern criticism or new criticism. A close reading of the text, that is what needs to be done. Because if you go away, gives immanent study a sort of rationality. There is a world in itself, and he says there is only one human self. So it deals with the history of the human self and imposing another thing. And therefore, in this, continuing his argument, he says, a text, please look at the, words that he uses. It has to be a radioscopic penetration of a text. What does he say? What is radioscopic penetration of a text? You know how the radiology, how the gamma rays or rays enter our body. That's the way a text has to be read. I think this phrase, a radioscopic penetration of a text, a reflection not on the surface. If you impose an ideology, you are, contemplating on the surface. You have to penetrate a text. You have to enter the text, and when you enter the text, you do your Marxist analysis. You do, everything is there. It is already there. A work is complete by itself. Therefore, it has to be read and explored for its inherent structures. Okay? And I have a feeling you got some sense of what structuralism is all about. Now, let's come to Derrida's deconstruction. What is deconstruction is all about? You have the sign, okay, and you have the signified. That's the whole problem. You have a sign and the signified. See, every word has its three phases, three things. You have a chalk piece, a word. You have the chalk piece, an object. And then you have the chalk piece used in a work of art. And deconstruction argues that all these three things are different. When the word chalk piece is used in literature, it does not refer to the chalk piece that you have seen at home. It does not refer to the word that you have seen in the dictionary. It refers, the meaning of chalk piece is conditioned by the structure. What is that structure? Yeah, what is that structure? You have the concept of the sign and the signified. There are two kinds of, in every structure is as old as the human civilization. That's number one. And there cannot be a structure without a center. What is the job of a center? The job of a center holds the meaning of a structure. The job of a center is to assign the role of each one of the parts of a structure. The job of the center is to hold the structure. That's number one. The job of the center is to assign definite meaning and definite place to a structure. For me, a grammar. My name is Mahadeva. My name is Mahadeva is a structure. This structure is held by a center. What is the center? Grammar, logic is the center. Mahadeva is the name. Is a verb. My is, a pronoun. Okay. So it is held together by a logic of a language. That is the center. There is a logic. It's not illogical because meaning comes out. My is not the name, or is not my name. It is Mahadeva that is name. Is and my, work towards it. So what is the center? Grammar is the center. Grammar holds the structure together. Grammar defines and assigns the meaning of each one of the words. And it is held together by a structure. There is logic. Okay, that is what words, every sentence, when the words that in this sense, structure is as old as a human civilization itself. And the concept of a center in a structure is also as old as the human civilization. When man started to speak, when man started to construct, when man started to draw something, the concept of a center has come into being. It is the center that holds the logic. Now, he says, in 20th century, there is a rupture. What is this rupture? He says, there are too many centers. What you do with one particular center, okay, the other centers opposite. Okay, so you have to postpone the meaning because there are not one center. Why does he say? See, Bible was a center for a very long time. So human tragedy, human destiny, human life was understood and interpreted and visualized from the point of view of Bible. Okay. After that, Nietzsche writes death of God, death of a writer. So important phenomena. So Marx comes and Marx says something else. Okay. So you have, one is a grammar center, another one is an intellectual center dealing with knowledge. The centers, now we have too many centers dealing with language, but the language, all the philosophies use belong to the common man, the society. But these same words have been appropriated by various ideologies, and the same words mean different according to different ideologies. As a result, arriving at one possible meaning is an impossibility. So he says, you have to catchy phrases. Center is not at the center. He says, center is no longer at the center. But a structure cannot be thought without a center. A structure will not exist without a center. Center is outside a structure and a center is inside the structure. We have transcendental centers now. Okay. A center is outside a structure and a center is inside a structure. And the centers outside, see, the grammatical meaning of a sentence would be incomplete if the intellectual, philosophical meaning of a structure is incomplete in that sense. I hope you understand. Now, for example, all of you understand the word moksha. How do you understand in Hindu terms, what is moksha? Moksha is attaining swarga after we pass from this world. And what is moksha according to Buddhism? Nirvana. What is nirvana? Does Buddha talk about afterlife? There is no such, such a thing as afterlife. Now, how do you fix the meaning of the word moksha? How do you fix the meaning of the word nirvana? Because we have multiple traditions using the same phrase, same logic. In such a situation, one center cancels the other center because of the number of ideologies that have come into being. Marxism is an ideology, and we have, what to say? We have Freud, another god of this world, and you have Laka, another god of this world. So Laka, Freud, Marx, Kafka, Nietzsche, and so many, Heidegger, all of them have come out with their own philosophical understanding of life. As a result, the center is not at the center. There is no, which in other words, to put it, to simplify it, you cannot ascertain the meaning from any one point of view. There are multiple options available. There are multiple ideologies. So what is, does feminism approve of Pratyurata? Pratyurata from a matriarchal point of view is totally different from what it would be from a feminist point of view. Do you think Pratyurata will be accepted by the feminists? Fidelity, faithfulness to the family, taking care of the children. Yes, we agree with you. Yes, we agree with you. Supposing you are a drunkard all your life, should I remain faithful to you? So what is Pratyurata? So there is a conflict, there is a rupture. See, center and Yeats, center cannot hold, things fall apart is also the same here. You can make use of Yeats' phrase to understand our situation. Therefore, signified is simply absent. There are meta-narratives, and a privileged signified. What is a privileged signified? What is a privileged signified is completely absent. A privileged center. Okay. See, for all of us, sirs, so far as Constitution is concerned, our political freedom is concerned, our rights are concerned, there is only one center, Constitution of India. But American Constitution is also a democratic constitution. American lawyer will come and argue just the opposite of what an Indian lawyer has argued. America also practices democracy. America also practices political freedom, individual rights, everything. But coming from the same political, administrations, units, even within the capitalist democratic view towards certain rights and obligations may vary from person to person. In this sense, there is an immense possibility of the meaning of a text. Deconstruction. There is a construction, and that construction today does not have a center. There are multiple centers. Therefore, there is no privileged center. There is no privileged center. There is no, there is no privileged center. Priyanka Kakoti, where are you from? Where are you from?
I am from Assam, sir.
Oh, nice meeting you. So there is one more,
Thank you, sir.
Sushma D. Where are you from?
Sir, could we allow for interaction with the,
Oh, okay, I'll stop here. I'll just conclude. There is no, okay, there is no, what to say, privileged center. There is no, what to say, privileged center or a privileged signified. The ultimate signified is a sign. Okay, a sign and its significance. What does it ultimately signify? So we have three things. So with every word, we have a donkey, and there is a word. The donkey word is used in a particular work of art, and the Derrida says the word that is used in this particular work of art is not, does not, has got nothing